This is a Marlins throwback, guys. Fish across the pond, back for one night only. Tons to get into on a Locked On Marlins Fish across the pond crossover.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins, your daily Marlins pod. I am your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _UK. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. This is your team every day, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Reminder, there's a YouTube channel. Hit subscribe over on the YouTube channel. It's also called Locked On Marlins, so it's easy to find, easy to comment. And the main question of the day is, who is the best looking of the UK GOATs? That is the question for you. You have to watch the show to answer this question. I already know the answer, but I won't tell you it. Nevertheless, guys, I am delighted to bring back four GOATs. There is a full stable of GOATs here. All five of us British guys here on Locked On Marlins to talk about, yes, the Marlins on a US network, the Locked On Podcast Network. This is perfection, in my opinion. So for those that are maybe new to this, a quick intro. The previous podcast I hosted, Fish Across the Pond, me and these good gentlemen together, it was a weekly show. And we get together and talk about the Marlins and many other musings during those episodes. It was a weekly pod. And I'm delighted to bring all the guys back into the show now on Locked On Marlins to have some fun. We'll have some fun, some British humor, no doubt. So please, you might need some translation services to understand the humor, etc., etc. But nevertheless, delighted to welcome, firstly, onto the show in the leadoff spot, of course, Lee Dobbs. How are we doing?
I am as good as always.
Absolutely classic.
3 years since I said that. So
3 years, mate, and you delivered it with aplomb. So we're off and running. You know, happy days in the two-hole. It's always in the two-hole. Dan the Man Healy. How we doing, Dan?
I'm very, very well, Pete. Been a long time, and great to be here as the aforementioned best-looking guest on Locked On Marlins. So
nailed on. The ladies champ, I believe that is also known as. So
if only.
All right, in the 3 spot, it's this guy, the beard. It's the beard to be feared, Sean Barrett. How we doing, brother?
I'm doing well, Pete. It's good to join you, and it's good to join these guys as well. This is a familiar spot for me all those years ago with everyone here. So yeah, no, this is going to be a fun one.
It really is. And in the rightful spot, the cleanup spot, Rob Newell is back. Rob, great to see you. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks. It's really, really good to be back on here. And Kent Emmanuel fan club here. So I'm looking forward to breaking down his season on this wonderful show.
Oh, my days. I mean, the funny thing is you say Kent Emmanuel, and I'm pretty convinced that the majority on this show wouldn't know what he looked like. Secondly, I'm actually scratching my head to work out, is he still in the Marlins organization? I actually don't know the answer to that.
No one knows.
No. That sums up 2024 Marlins in a nutshell. So before we get rolling, and this is kind of going to be the vibes of this show, before we get rolling, it's right for us to reintroduce ourselves to perhaps a new audience. So the question to kind of kick things off for everyone is, we'll start with Lee Dobbs in the leadoff spot. How long have you been a Marlins fan? And who of this wonderful collection of players, who is your current favorite Marlins player right now?
Well, I've been a Marlins fan since the early 2000s. So I did see the World Series win in 2003. So I started off as a Dolphins and Heat fan, and then just followed the Marlins. I think it must have been like 2001, 2002. I saw my first games on Channel 5. But I mean, this current team, there's not many stars to pick from. I mean, I guess it would be Sandy if you counted him, obviously when he's back. But I guess my current favorite player is probably Jesus Sanchez. He's got to be the longest serving, I think, on the team.
Yeah.
And he's in my fantasy team, so
there you go. There's some fantasy bias in there. There's nothing wrong with that. Dan the Man Healy, same question. I love the fact, actually, by the way, Lee Dobbs, full-blown glory hunter, like just decided, right, the Marlins are about to get good. I'm going to start following the Marlins. Love to see that. Dan the Man Healy, what about you, mate? What's been your Marlins fandom tenure and favorite current player, if you can name one?
Yeah, well, similar to Lee, same sort of story in the terms that I started as a Heat fan and therefore migrated to Marlins and Dolphins and so on. So nowhere near as Lee, long as Lee, but about 7-8 years, I think I've been following the franchise. In the earlier days, I was a lot more active and interested in it, partly because I was part of your magnificent show on Fist Cross Pond. So I was sort of a lot more invested in seeing how the team was doing, so we could talk about it for an hour a week. Right now, mate, as I said to you just before we came on, I mean, look, I told myself I wasn't going to bother this year with a subscription on the day of the season coming. I just went, sod it, let's do it again. Signed up for the monthly roll and pass, and after the first month, that was cancelled. And yeah, I think look, going through my favourite player. I mean, Jazz was my favourite player. He infused everything about what sport should be, in my opinion. He played with a smile. He played with swag. He was just made for Miami. He was just the perfect sort of hand-in-hand relationship there. He was a cool dude. He was the sort of person that gets bums in seats, and that's what you'd sort of tune in for, to watch players like that. So I was gutted when he went. So him aside, yeah, look, you got Sandy there. I'm still hopeful he can come back and pick up the form that he was as a real ace. But going back, I mean, well, you know, when you look at the team where we picked up, you know, Uranus and Alfaro and Caleb and all of those. But yeah, Dr. K was my man. Caleb Smith. He was my pitching first love, I suppose. I loved watching him. So yeah, I'll probably go with Caleb.
This is the funniest thing, mate, is when I think back to that show and that season in particular, and I think of Dan Healy, the first thing that pops into my head is Caleb Smith and Dr. K. It's exactly what I pictured. And the funny thing is, you know, this is what we, you know, were born into, for me and you particularly, as like quite new Marlins fans. You were all in on Dr. K and I was all in on Jose Urena. And this, I mean, I don't think we quite knew what we were watching. And I think it's fair to say, on reflection, neither were probably that good. But at the time, we were all in on these dudes, right?
Well, this is the thing, and I was saying the same sort of thing with the Marlins is when I first started picking up my fandom with Miami Heat, and that was the same thing. I missed all the glory days, so I missed the World Series with all the Marlins, and I missed all the championships with the Heat as well. So I missed LeBron James and Dwayne Wade in their pump and all that, and I came into the fandom with average players like Dion Waiters and James Johnson, Tyler Johnson, these sort of players that all, you know, they're nobodies really, and they've done not a lot since, and yet, but that was the team that I initially got involved in, so I loved them, and it was the same thing with the Marlins, with your Brinson and as I said, your Rainer and Dr. K and Rojas. They were the team that I originally fell in love with, and so I've always got a soft spot for them, even though they probably, as you say, weren't very good.
What a time to be alive, no doubt. Sean Barrett, you've been there, you know, from the right at the start, I think, of well, pretty much anyway, of this Marlins organization. I think that's correct, but. Favorite current player as well. I don't think I know where you're at on that. Obviously, Coop's gone, and so we've got no Cooper to talk about. So I don't know the answer.
To be honest, it's still up for play, isn't it? This year hasn't really. No one's taken that mantle yet. I've got the Garrett Cooper baseball card behind my back right here. Yeah, I'm still waiting for someone to take over. Obviously, Sandy's been amazing, and he's been the best player for the Marlins. So he would be an easy choice. My concern is how long is he going to be here? Is an obvious heir apparent for that mantle as well. But with the Cooper love and your Brinson love and your Urena love, we're English. We don't want the star player. We want the underdog. We like the guy that's got to battle and get through struggles to make it, just to be, to steal your phrase yet again, bang average. So I need someone to step up. I need a nobody to step up. For one guy, since he's been with the team, Bender, I've always talked about Bender because I just love his story, coming from independent ball, throwing 100 miles an hour. Obviously, just recently come back from injury. So who knows? Going into next year, he might be the guy that has to take the mantle of my favorite player for a little while.
He might be the closer. Heck, he might be a starter. I mean, who knows the way the Marlins, shuffle the deck in the offseason. We saw that with AJ Pug. So I like it. Pending favorite player. We'll wait to see, but watch this space. Feels like Bender is ascending on that in that role. Rob Newell, what about you in terms of how long have you been a Marlins fan, and equally, who is your current favorite player?
Yeah, I've been a Marlins fan for, I'd say about 12 or 13 years, but I've followed baseball for a lot longer than that. I used to follow the Red Sox and Baltimore. And it was really, at the time, I'd got into it, not because of baseball, but because I liked other American sports. I liked NASCAR. I used to sometimes, watch maybe a bit of the ice hockey, and I got into the fantasy sports, and that's how I got into baseball. Someone invited me in, and that's how it is. And also back in the early days, used to be on Channel 4 as well as Channel 5. They used to have the odd game, and I'd watch those. So that's how I kind of got into it. And I've been sort of more invested in it until when I first went to what is now Lone Depot Park, but was Marlins Park at the time in 2012. I saw Giancarlo Stanton hit a grand slam that hit the scoreboard and smashed that. Since then it was like, this is the sport for me. And I was lucky enough earlier this year to be over there to see opening day. I got to see a couple of games and got to see Jupiter Hammerheads play, and it was a wonderful experience being in there. And even though what's on the out in the field at the moment is absolutely dreadful, the actual experience in the park and the experience in the minor leagues is absolutely wonderful. So they have got something right there. In regards to sort of current players, it's really difficult because I was a big John Bertie fan, and he was traded the day before opening day. And I really think they would have won opening day with John Bertie. It went to extra innings. And things could have been a little bit different to what they were. And then Jazz was traded. And what you're left with now, like Nick Fortes is actually having a really good year. I think, and from an MLB perspective. And I think he's got to be my favourite player on there just because of how good his arm is. Who
we'll look
else
at the small wins now.
Yeah. But, if someone's running for base, he's going to probably catch him. And so he's got to be my favourite player at the moment. There's a few sort of, I don't know, sort of Anthony Bender's one to think about as and Sandy, you hope he'll be back next year. But we used to talk about arms for days, didn't we? How huge our sort of pitching rotation was, and to see what's happened this year is pretty awful.
Yeah, no doubt. I've got to be honest with you. I did not have Nick Fortes on anyone's bingo card at all in this intro segment, and so that just that epitomizes the 2024 campaign, where we've got Nick Fortes, we've got Anthony Bender, Jesus Sanchez, and we've got Jazz Chisholm Jr., who was traded 2 months back. So, boy, oh boy, this sums it up. But listen, guys, I think it's clear that it's been a tough season. It's clear that there's been a wind of change, let's say, that swept through this organization. Started with Kim and Peter Bendix, etc. So, Lee, as a fan, I mean, I've spoke about it a ton. Sean probably spoke about it a ton. Just how does this rebuild, because it is a rebuild, how does this compare to previous rebuilds, in your opinion? Like, how is the feelings compared to previous rebuilds for you?
I mean, it's been tough because before you could see there was a plan in place. At least, we're trading and we're getting good, pieces back and things like that. This time, there doesn't look to be anyone completely special. Ready to come in. I mean, this could be a very long, time away. And I think it's coming off of last year. All right, we may be over, to make the playoffs, but the hype from that and the hope to now this, when we weren't expecting a rebuild. We were hoping to push on, has been a real just miss. I mean, there was a stat I think when you look at the stats on MLB.com and things like that. We only had 2 players who even qualified to appear because they haven't made like enough at bats.
Yeah.
And even the pitching, it's very likely we don't get a single player with 100 innings pitched. Like the whole season has just been a wreck, and it may be a long like a long way back yet.
It might do. Dan, when we get to next year, let's fast forward now. It's March 29th, somewhere in that range. You get the email. You need to renew your subscription. It's opening day. It's Sandy Paul Skeens, potentially. I mean, you haven't been following baseball that close. You may not know who the hell Paul Skeens is, so I just want to call that out. But Sandy Skeens could be going opening day. You get the email. It says, Dan Healy, it's £15, $20. Let's do a conversion for our listeners here. $20 to subscribe for this month. Are you going to hit the button in March 25?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for it, mate. So of course I will. I'll probably buy the newest jersey. I'll probably start. I'll do all of that probably, and then I get wrapped up. I'm always the same. I'll get wrapped up in everything and the excitement. And there's nothing like opening days. There's nothing like the start of the season feeling. And where anything could happen, and then of course everything does happen, and it's never anything good, and then you very quickly sort of fall out of love with the initial reactive impulses. So but I'll do it. I know I'll do it. Of course I will. And then I'll quickly unsubscribe in about a month's time.
There you go. What about let's go backwards a touch though. What was 2023 like for you? Where obviously it was a very different vibe in 23. The Marlins were rolling. How did you enjoy that season? Again, you're like similar to me, where we followed the team a similar amount of years. I've not been in a 162, playoff push before. What I found is it was you live and breathe almost every pitch, every out, and for 162 games, that is very tiring. What I realized, I didn't realize just how long a season it truly is when you're in the mix. So, what was your experience at 23?
Well, it's what every fan wants is competitive sport, whatever that may be, baseball, basketball, football, whatever it is. You want to be in the mix. And there's also a real sort of, there's a good excitement angle about it where you're somewhere in the middle. Like when you're obliterating teams all the time, sometimes you turn on, you're just like, okay, it's going to be a win, doesn't matter what happens. When you can beat anybody on your day, but you can lose to anybody on your day. And that's very much what all the Miami teams are like in their way. They're all very much in the middle, apart from the Florida Panthers, who have gone on and been sensational over the last year. But the Dolphins, the Heat, and the Marlins have always, Marlins as of 2023, which we're talking about. There's something nice about not knowing what you're going to get when you turn on the telly and see where, and that's great. But any sports fan wants to just be able to support their team at the meaningful time of the year when it gets to the sharp end, when it gets to the business end of the calendar. You want your team to be able to root for, and that's all anybody asks for. I don't care if we don't win. I just want us to be in the mix. And so 2023 was great to be able to, for the first time in what my fandom was, apart from the very short COVID season where we got into the wild card spots. That was the first time I'd seen the Marlins in the mix at the right end of the season. So that's great. That's what you want. So I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Me too, by the way. And I think that's kind of the problem. And this what Lee was touching on really, where you had that euphoria of a 162 playoff run. And that's what you want baseball to feel like. Like you're in the mix. It may not go your way. They didn't end up taking, didn't get a World Series at the end, but they're just in the mix. The games matter. You feel something. And then to go from that to an 0-9 start, and next thing is you trade one of your best dudes in the first month, and you're like, okay, this is feeling different, and it's feeling completely the opposite, and you feel a little bit hopeless in some ways as a fan. And there's a few stages of acceptance and depression along the way, and then we start to look ahead to March 25 and go, am I going to pay the money? Yeah, of course I'm going to pay the money.
It was also very nice at that point as well to actually see Lone Depot Park with some bums in seats and some atmosphere, because we know we've seen when they do the Heritage Days there and all that with the Cubans and all of that, and it's rocking that place, and you just feel like one day you'd love to be able to see this place packed out with Marlins fans. Whether that will happen, I don't know. I don't know whether the fandom is truly there to get that arena, that stadium packed out all the time, but it was nice. It was an odd feeling because most of the time, as I said, there's hundreds, not thousands, and that was a nice thing to see as well.
Yeah, it was. It was. I think I saw something earlier. Again, Fish on First are like, they're covering it still to within an inch of its life this season. And so I tip my cap to them guys. I think they shared that the Marlins have got to sell out the next 6 games to surpass their attendance for last year. I mean, Ohtani's in town, and they actually, I'm very interested to see what attendance they do get over this Dodgers series in particular. The Bravos are coming to town as well, so it could be interesting. But to your point, I think they've taken a step back, like for obvious reasons, attendance-wise, which, we don't speak a lot, Sean, about Bruce Sherman. We haven't. I mean, we speak most weeks, and we don't give a lot of airtime, actually, to Bruce Sherman, in all honesty. But the attendance going backwards significantly is going to hurt him in the place where it hurts him most, and that's going to be in the pocket, because that is the lifeblood to the Marlins. And listen, they would have been excited about what they saw last year attendance-wise, and it's gone in reverse gear now. It may be in reverse gear next year. I mean, the amount of offers for season tickets, I mean, it's getting crazy now. I mean, they just need to email Dan, to be honest with you. He'll take them up on one of the offers, no doubt. But Bruce Sherman must be sitting there going, I feel it. Like, I'm feeling the pain here where, the attendance has gone backwards. The money's not there for him. Is he going to be regretting things, maybe? If that's the right word?
Unfortunately not. I mean, bums on seats in baseball just doesn't move the needle financially for a team. Bruce is taking money in through revenue sharing. All the jersey sales are split across the 30 teams. Every dollar spent on a Yankees jersey or a Dodgers jersey is split between the 30 teams. The only money the teams actually make 100% of their money on is in the actual ballpark merchandise stands. So whether or not 0 people turn up or 30,000 people turn up every day, Bruce doesn't care. It's not the fan interest in the team does not affect his bottom line at all. Of course, it does a little bit. In the grand scheme of things, the merchandise money is so it's not even secondary. It's like a proper tertiary kind of concern for him. His concern is keeping the bottom line as low as possible and fielding our team, any team, 26 men.
That's been tricky this year. There's been 70 guys that have played for the Marlins this year. 7-0.
And that's the proof in the pudding, isn't it? They knew that they weren't going to compete this year. They actively chose not to. The whole design of this year was, let's get that first pick, or at least get the most ping pong balls in the lottery for that. And if you look at the season as far as that as a result, they've been extremely successful.
That was the hidden priority, right? It's one of those, like, if you opened up maybe Bendix's dossier and looked at, okay, what are the priorities here that I'm not going to tell you, that are the written down ones? Probably pretty high on that would have been a relatively high draft pick in 25. And to your point, he's going to achieve that priority. One final one, and we'll get into Rob Newell as well. The free agent approach and the free agent contracts have been pretty poor in the years that I've followed the team. Our good friend Wei-Yin Chen used to be heavily discussed on Fish Across the Pond. That then segued into Avisel Garcia, that became the Locked On Marlins guy. I've got to be honest. I look at what the Marlins have done in free agency, and Sean, I got to be honest. I got to think: do the Marlins ever commit, let's say, $70 million plus to a free agent in the next 3 to 5 seasons? Can you see a committal of that number of dollars to anyone, free agent wise, in the next 5 years?
Honestly, no. If you look at some of the reactions, obviously this year is a good example of Tim Anderson, and obviously Avi, that's not just this year, but multiple years. And a lot of people I've heard, and I've been guilty of saying this myself, these hungry quad A guys that come up and really work their tail off. That was the Miggy Rose storyline, wasn't it, in 2019? This is a pretty much bang average offensive player who's good with the glove, but he's the tryhard. He's the captain. He wants to play to the best of his actual abilities.
Yeah.
These are the kind of guys that right now are the guys that we're talking about as being the green shoots for next year, through this rebuild as it is. Bruce must be loving that. Hearing fans talk about their love for these guys who are on the minimum, and I don't want any high-priced, aged veteran anymore. Bruce is loving it, isn't it? You're telling me not to spend? Absolutely, I can deliver on that.
Oh boy. Rob Newell, the cleanup spot, perfect spot. Listen, when I think of Rob Newell on Fish Across the Pond, there would be at least a weekly segment on minor league coverage. Rob, I've got to be honest, you specifically must be really enjoying the 2024 campaign, because this Marlins farm has been juiced, I think is overselling it, probably, but it has been enhanced, let's say, from where it was at the start of the campaign. Prospect statuses are, they are in the eye of the beholder. People see prospects differently. It's fair to say the Marlins started as a bottom 5 farm. They moved a ton of top-level major league talent and now have a middling farm, is how I would describe it. Mid-pack. No blue chips, really, but how do you see this Marlins farm system at this point? And is this going to be a continual process where they just keep moving the vets, Sandy, Lozado, Berger, etc., and just keep stacking the farm in the next year or so?
The issue I kind of have with that process is because we've been through it once before, where we did have a top-rated farm system, and we used to talk quite openly, not just about people like Max Meyer, but JJ Bleday. And there was a list of pitching we would go on about. Yuri Perez came up, and it all got, it seemed like everything was coming to that point that we'd been planning over those years, or the Marlins had, of this vision of where they were sort of trading, middling stars and building up the farm system. And then it was just traded away. You just think of some of the trades that did happen. And players like JJ Bleday is a really good example, where it was somebody who suddenly got their opportunity probably a little bit early, sort of didn't quite make it, and then was just thrown to one side. And so I'm a little bit doubtful that they can make this work. And actually, the performance of the minor league teams this year hasn't been that great. You think about the Hammerheads; they won their division last year, and it's not been quite the same. There's been a heck of a recycling of players up and down. Take Victor Mesa Jr. being a good one. He started off in the Hammerheads and ended up at the Jumbo Shrimp. There's been quite an acceleration of players probably through a lack of quality. Yeah, and that's what we've seen. So I could hope that this is a nice restock and we'll get something out of it, but I just can't see where. I just lost faith really that they can actually do anything with it, and that we'll just end up back in the same situation where if someone does get through, they'll get traded. The big problem we have compared to a few years ago is that when you've traded away Jazz. Now, if you think about the opening day of the season and how strong a team we kind of had, you still expect Jazz to be traded for some younger prospects come, the deadline day. But we slowly dripped away these players, and there's no one significant that we're all shouting about who's coming through.
No, that's the problem.
And so what have we actually got for it? And that's the situation. You take the opening day being a good example and just wrap up a lot of things we've just said. 32,500 there, and I was very, very lucky to be there. The atmosphere was absolutely banging, really, really fantastic. And unfortunately, a narrow loss with a Sixto Sanchez blown save, just to kind of possibly give a key to what the season was really going to be. And you look at your Tanner Scotts, and you look at Jazz and Dela Cruz, and what you had in there. You had quite a few players in there that are not quite at their peak. We've traded them away, and what we got left with is a team that I'm really, really fearful of, that despite, yes, it's a lot stronger in the minor leagues. A few teams have really picked up a little bit lately, like Beloit and Pensacola. But I fear we're in the Colorado Rocky zone where we're just going to be bouncing along the bottom for ages. I don't see where Bendix is going with this. I don't see where the magical prospects. We're just hoping that someone comes through who under the radar and is true.
Oh boy, oh boy. Rob Newell just absolutely unloaded, which is exactly what I wanted to hear. Rob, when we started Fish Across the Pond, again, this is all about connections, right? When I think of Dan Healy, I think of Caleb Smith immediately. When I think of Rob Newell, I think of Zach Gallen. That's the guy that I think about immediately, because that 2019 season, Zach Gallen was like on the cusp. And you were telling me week after week, Pete, we've got this guy, Zach Gallen, he's down there and he's absolutely unreal. And then he was moved and we got Jazz and he was unreal. Who is the current Zach Gallen that Rob Newell has got his like laser focus on in this system? If anyone, like, do we have a Zach Gallen 2.0 that you're following closely here?
Not really.
Oh,
So
no.
I think we were kind of slightly sort of, I say, you know, I think Perez really was the guy. I think if you were looking at the minor leagues, what was happening, and especially in the previous two seasons, that was the guy that we were kind of looking for coming through. And then, of course, we've got those kind of injury situations. We also had that kind of thing about Max Meyer, and it was like, right, okay, you know what? We're in that situation now where there's injuries. We'll bring him through, and he'll be fine. And of course, it's just not worked out. And there isn't anybody who I can think of who I've seen this year that is really kind of really lighting it up for me. I've forgotten the guy from Jupiter Hammerheads I saw who's now gone through, and it'll come back to me in a minute. He was quite exciting as a picture. That will come back to me in a few seconds, but never mind. But there is beyond that, I'm afraid not.
Oh dear. I've just realized, guys, I've slipped back into Fish Across the Pond vibes because I completely forgot to do the ads. So I better hit one of them now, and then we'll carry on this conversation. So let's let you know about our good friends over at PrizePicks. It is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's you against the numbers. No sharks. Don't have to worry about them. All you do is pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in, baby. That includes up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. And it's the best way to get action on all sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. If you like offers, this is the moment. Listen up, guys. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's Locked On MLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins, guys. It's a Fish Across the Pond crossover. We are taking it all the way back to 2019 vibes here when the Marlins were still not good. But we were having fun. We were having fun then. Let's change it up a bit here now, guys. Lead off, coming back to you in the leadoff spot here. Sandy Alcantara throwing a bullpen seemingly this evening. So let's actually cover some Marlins news from today that we have to do. Sandy, though, throwing a live BP. First time he's thrown against hitters all year. By all accounts, via Javier Sanoa, via a translator, he was throwing 99 gasolina. Sandy, for you, Lee, I know the reports are there that the Marlins plan to retain him, but they also said they were planning to compete this year. Sandy Alcantara, is he the opening day starter for the Marlins 2025?
Yes. I think they keep him for now, obviously, because other teams will want to see how good he is still, obviously coming off. Well, I mean, how's it been now? A year. By the time March comes around, it's going to be like 18 months or so from when he last started the game. So yeah, I think unless there's a like someone comes in with a stupid offer, I think the Marlins will retain him, and then obviously he'll be the first candidate to be traded. Like come the deadline again. Like June, July time, if the Marlins are out of it, which they will be. So yeah, for me, he will be the starter. Yeah.
It's inevitable for you though, Lee, that Sandy is moved in 25 at some juncture.
Yes. I mean, to be honest, is there much point in keeping him? I mean, when does his deal end? Is it? I can't remember.
He's got two like actual years and then a team option as well. So 3 in reality, I think, is the actual.
I mean, we're not going to be contending, for a World Series in that time frame. So for me, it's probably best for both that he will be traded. So for us, hopefully he does start off well, and we can get like the maximum haul, back.
Yeah, the question you have to say is, I mean, if they move Sandy, do they get any top 100 prospects back? I mean, boy, oh boy, I mean, who knows? But
that's what I'm saying. That's why I think you need to see him in action first.
I think so.
And then teams might, buy it a bit more.
Coincidence, though, he's doing live BP, on the field today. Dodgers in town. Like, coincidence here, they're kind of ramping up Sandy, in the public eye. Anyone could see what he's throwing. Like, for me, I think that's interesting timing that they're going through that at this point with like 2 weeks to go in the season, that it's like a little bit of a public showcase there of Sandy visually. Is there any smoke? Is it no smoke without fire? I don't know how I'm trying to phrase this, but you know what I'm saying. You piecing this conspiracy theory together here with me, Lee, or not?
Maybe you could say, say so, but I mean, there may be some, something to it, but yeah, for me, if I was still a GM, I would still be like, I'd want to see him first.
Agreed.
In a game.
I think you're politely saying, as a good friend once said to me, it might be nothing. I think that's exactly what you're trying to say to me. Dan the Man Healy, our merch specialist. The specialist topic for you here, my good sir, is the Marlins City Connects are being retired. Their current City Connect to be retired. So the Sugar Kings will be no more. They will be worn for the final time this weekend against the Bravos. They will have a new City Connect jersey for next season. The question to you, Dan, is do they have a teal aspect to these City Connects, or do they go again in a completely different direction?
I would love to see something in the teal because it's a fan's favourite, isn't it? Everyone wants to teal. But what I don't want them to do is to just do what Miami Heat have done over the last 4 years and just do the same jersey in a different colour. It's just like, have some imagination. Come on, you guys have got people behind you. You've got a lot of might. You've got Nike or Adidas or whatever executives behind this. Don't just go same again, change it from red to white, for example, or red to teal in this instance. It's just, it makes a bit of a mockery of it. But I mean, the Sugar Kings jerseys was one of the only jerseys in sport where I had other fans coming up to me from other teams and saying, I've bought that, because it's that fire. So they've done a fantastic job with that. So that's pretty cool. One thing, actually, talking about merch, excuse me for not having watched them for a while, but do they still wear the grey Miami as well?
Yeah,
they do. Like, I remember Rob actually saying to this years ago, why have Miami Marlins got grey jerseys? What in Miami is grey? It's the polar opposite of what that town, what that city represents. Its vibrancy and its colour and its, its style and finesse. And they put out a dull grey jersey and they've still got it 5 years down the line. That really annoys me. But
they need to be retired. And I think they're two-tone this year as well. Like, they've botched up the trousers against the jersey, so they're different shades of grey. I mean, again, that's another topic for another day that we probably shouldn't get into. But
hopefully they'll throw something pretty electric in teal. That'd be cool.
Yeah, for sure. One guy I just wanted to get a brief sense from you on, Dan, is, and he was mentioned along the way, Sixto Sanchez. A good friend of ours that we discussed plenty on the show, obviously burst onto the scene in 2020 when we were like closely following along. What's been your general take on Sixto from afar at this point? Just how crazy is it that the highs of Sixto in 2020 and the lows, 4 years on from that, where we're at now, it seems crazy that we're in this situation.
Yeah, it's a sad story because it was the first prospect where we all got genuinely really excited about. And we had to, when you see someone this young, it's not like a football star over here who bursts onto the scene at 16 and is in the team immediately, and you're immediately watching him develop in front of your eyes. It's a bit different because you get all this excitement about an elite prospect, one of the highest in minor league baseball, and he's yours, and yet you have to wait for him to come through and go through the development programs. You're not really seeing anything of him, and eventually, obviously, then comes the breakdown and the injuries, and then when you finally did get to see him, it wasn't anywhere near as expected, getting hauled off the mound after an innings or two, and it's a really sad story because, as I said, from my point of view, it was the first big prospects. I know we had like a good farm system back then, and we got there was a few names that we rattled off that we was excited, but Sixto was the one. He was the one we was all really keen to see, and as I say, you just don't like to see that in any sportsman, let alone one of your own guys. So just a sad end really, and we'll see, but it is a bit crazy.
It is definitely. I'm with you on that. He was, the type of guy, the type of prospect that I remember he was starting games, after midnight our time in the 2020 season. I was like, I'm staying up for this. I need to watch this live. Was the feeling with Sixto, and it's just so crazy how the injuries have kicked in, and it's just to your point, it's a sad story associated with a guy that was clearly super talented. The injuries kicked in and just haven't been able to get himself back on the field, which is discouraging. And I feel like the end is nigh for Sixto with the Marlins. I don't know the future generally, but gut feel is it wouldn't shock me if he doesn't pitch again in the big leagues, which is kind of crazy. Sean, what I did want to briefly ask you about here, we have, speaking about studs on the mound, we got Ryan Weathers is due to pitch against the Dodgers this weekend. So a couple of little questions here from a Dodgers perspective. Firstly, let's talk about Ryan Weathers. He's somehow I don't know how he's missed so long, Weathers. It felt like he had like a fingernail issue or a blister, or he had a scratch on his, I don't know. It felt like the most innocuous injury, and then he just disappears for months. That is so Marlins. I never believe anything they say about injuries, ever. But Ryan Weathers has worked his way back. He's probably going to get, 2 starts, maybe 3, I guess. It's great to see him back. Just how impressed were you with Ryan Weathers this season, though, just in his body work that we saw earlier in the campaign?
Yeah, he was at that time, he was really sort of fighting for, he was in the rotation, and when we were starting to trust him, here's this young arm that came across and did a Luzardo.
Yeah,
he was god awful in the couple of starts he got the year we traded for him. Had an off season with Mel, came back, and he was firing, game after game, real quality innings. And then the finger injury came about, and for sure the Marlins would have said it's day to day. They don't expect him to miss a start. Lo and behold, months and months later, season's absolutely cooked. He's going to get 2 starts, and at a certain point, you ask the question, why? Why bother? Obviously, he's fully recovered, and there's no chance, hopefully, of any recurrence of that injury. I don't think they'd even begin to ramp him up to get to starts if that was the case. But he's going to go into next year. He's still super young. He's shown some promise. I think, hopefully, the expectations aren't too high. I don't think, we need to see more of a sample size from him. But everything we saw pre-injury was super encouraging, that this guy is a part of the rotation and not just a 5 or a bad 4. This is a guy that could be a 3, a 2, maybe.
Oh,
And in the Marlins rotation right now, we've seen this year what happens when it goes badly. Next year, wouldn't it be nice to see things go well?
It would be glorious. Let me hit the final ads, and then I've got one question for Rob, and then I've got a couple of roundups for everyone. I know we're running long on this one. We're kind of running to fish across the pond scheduling, to be honest with you. But firstly, let's let you know about our good friends over at FanDuel. And you've heard us talk loads about FanDuel here on Locked On Marlins. It is America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. You need to listen up. You need to act quick, because through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers, yes, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. Dan Healy is pleased with that one. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins, guys. Final segment here with me and the UK GOATs from Fish Across the Pond. Rob Newell, Dodgers in town. Miguel Rojas on his way back in. And this is your specialist topic area. I need to hear from you your expectations of the vibes in the ballpark. You were there opening day. You experienced the vibes. What kind of vibe should Miguel Rojas expect on his return back here into Lone Depot, particularly considering there's going to be a lot of eyeballs and maybe fans in the seats, bonus fans maybe here, with the all eyes on Shohei Ohtani and his quest for glory at this point. But what should Miguel Rojas expect, do you think, from the Marlins fan base?
Do you know what? If we'd had a good season like last year and he turned up, I think he would have received a mixed reaction. And the reaction would have been, a few fans, unhappy about the way he left, the vibes that he potentially gave that team. There was always stories coming out of how he commanded the dressing room, maybe wrongly, and sort of his sort of working relationship with Mattingly as well. That kind of maybe sort of upset a few of the players. But I really think he'll be a sideshow. So it's the issue really with the Dodgers coming in town isn't to do with the fact that Rojas is returning. It's all to do with that number that Ohtani is chasing. Mm-hmm. Who's going to catch that home run in Marlins Park? Because it's very likely that he's going to hit some home runs in Marlins Park because of how random our pitching is. Mm-hmm. So I think he'll be a sideshow. The atmosphere will be good, but it'll be good because there's a lot of people going to see a spectacle, but not to see the Marlins. So the atmosphere in the stadium when I was there on opening day was amazing because there was a lot of hope for the Marlins. However, it's I just think he'll be there. There'll be a few boos, and that will be it really. There won't be much reaction. If we were doing really well and had a stadium which is actually full of more Marlins fans, then I think it would be different. I just got to pick up one point from earlier, and what Sean has helped me with. It was Noblemeyer I was trying to think of was the player, and Thomas White is the other pitching prospect we should keep an eye on. Has done very well at Beloit and Jupiter. So yeah, thanks, Sean.
There we go. Sean Barrett is on it these days. A new prospect guru, Sean Barrett. I guess where we're up to now. It's going to be interesting. I mean, it's good to see Miggy Rowe back. I think time is a good healer on that front, let's say. And I think there was definitely like some obvious friction with him, Jazz, et cetera, going on, which, I think irked the Marlins fan base because, listen, the Marlins fan base, I think, loved Jazz a lot, in a sense. And I think, the way maybe it was portrayed that Mickey was acting towards him, there's some negativity around that. But, I think this is going to be all about this series anyway. Is about Ohtani. Can he get to the number he needs to get to in this? I know he doesn't need to do it in this series, but there's going to be some eyeballs on. He's got some chances, right? I mean, there's a couple of pitches here going that, he can get at, let's say. And so it's going to be very, very interesting. No doubt about it. Guys, let's do a couple of quick fires and then we'll get out of here. So our wives, girlfriends, other halves are happy with us for one time when we do this show. And we said we deliver on time. We said we'd finish by 11. p.m., I think was the time, UK time. I do want to pick up one point that before we carry on, for anyone watching would have seen I went into full hysterics during Rob's answer to that. It was the use of the terminology of dressing room. And it just suddenly dawned on me that dressing room might not translate to the American listeners, which completely creased me up. So again, guys, if you're listening and you're based in the States, please let me know. Do you know what a dressing room, does that translate to you what a dressing room is in the sporting environment? Effectively, what the translation is the clubhouse, the locker room, whatever it might be. But dressing room is very much a British description of a football changing room, is probably the best way of describing it. So I just wanted to just signpost that, why I went into like full-blown hysterics during Rob's answer, because it just dawned on me that no one probably understood what the hell Rob was talking about there. Nevertheless, this is the question I've asked everyone, so I'm going to run through quick. Lee, crystal ball, have a look, give it a rub. The next year that the Marlins make the postseason, what year will that be for you? Considering the answers you've just given me, it could be 2030 something.
Yeah, I mean, if I was guessing right now, probably not this decade,
oh, boy.
to be honest. So, yeah, we're probably looking at 2030 and above. I mean, it took us, what was that, 17 years between 2003 and 2020? Yeah, and even that was a shortened season. You know, it basically took us 20 years to do it again last time. And I mean, hopefully not, not as long this time, but yeah, I'd be surprised, pleasantly surprised if it was before 2030.
Quick follow-up, because I did say it's quick fire, but I think it's an interesting question. If it's in 2030 something that they make the postseason next, is Peter Bendick still with the organization at that point?
No, probably not. Okay.
Dan the Man Healy, same to you. Crystal ball is there. You're always the positive side, so you're going to say 2025. I can already feel it.
So we're in 2024 now, so give or take a year, 2050 something, I'd say.
Do they ever make the postseason again? Is the question? Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, that would be a feat, but no, I think it's probably going to be. I mean, look, the thing is, we've rebuilt sort of during a rebuild, so it's a bit of a strange one. I don't know where the last one stopped and this one began, but we're at it. We're here. They don't happen overnight. They're a long process. They're a grueling process. I think Lee's pretty spot on. It's going to start with a 3, isn't it? It's going to be 30 something, I think.
Sean Barrett, same to you.
I'm going to do something that's completely out of character, and I'm going to try and be positive. We're on a long run time at this point, and I might have had a bit too much to drink, maybe. Who knows?
Look, the boys are guzzling, I got to be honest. Dan's guzzling as fast as I'm on wine. I mean, Rob, what do you got there, by the way?
Water.
Sorry.
If the Marlins do what I think they're going to do, and I've fought this since spring and since Sandy signed his deal, I didn't think Sandy would be here at the back end of his deal when the money ramps up to a Marlins-like number. It's not a big number, but it's big for the Marlins. Well, it's big for Bruce Sherman, basically. If they do what I think they're going to do and blow it all up, then Lee and Dan are right. It's going to be starting with 2030 something, if we're lucky. If they don't trade Sandy and a few things bounce the right way, 2026 is an option. I have not fully, I'm very close to giving up on it, but I've not completely fully given up on the fact that they try and push for 2026.
The Sandy window. I mean, everything hinges around Sandy, I think, is the basic. My main takeaway from this whole conversation is the future hinges on Sandy. And if they flip him, then we effectively push back 5 years plus, maybe 10. I think Dan maybe had 25 years, I think, in his estimation. So, it's does hinge on Sandy. Rob, where's your head at, considering your view of the farm system was not overly optimistic at this point? So What year are they making the postseason next, if at all?
Okay, so the positive side of things is that if the arms stay healthy, and that's been a continual question, but Sandy, we talk about Ryan Weathers being young, Luzardo, if it all comes together, Perez is fit. Then that gives a real kind of stable rotation, which had been completely and utterly missing. And yeah, we might still, we said about the farm system, but we've mentioned two there earlier, Noble Meyer and Thomas White, who could come through. Okay, and there were others as well. It's just that, as I say, there's nothing, Noble Meyer's got a bit of reputation behind him, like wow, the draft pick, etc., all behind him. But where it concerns me massively is what we've dismantled and how they rebuild it. So players like John Bertie, flexible players who are there, would grind at the end, really good running the bases, you see that, a player with a fairly low ERA, but quite a few RBIs. You want that kind of player, because that was the whole principle years ago that they were trying to get to. You grind the wins, you get those runs every innings, and that's how it comes through. That is really, really missing. So to get to that point, you're going to have to trade for a player that is like a John Bertie.
Yeah.
And it's just a few of those components are gone. One thing I will say is that I'm not sure we would have been successful with Jazz. I think he would have ended up being too big a personality and it would have distracted from the teams. And now the Rojas situation, I know we laugh about, but so if they trade right and Sherman does actually spend next year, so if this is a year they've written off because Sandy's injured and they do it next year, then they could turn it completely around next year. I think the reality is that at the moment, I cannot see this Bendix-Sherman combination producing anything. That's the negativity from it, no matter what the farm system comes through with. So the positive side of me does agree with Sean. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'm with Lee and Dan in that. I just don't know if it will ever happen.
Rob, you have the script because the final question to the guys, and we'll run around. I'll start with you, actually. We'll go in reverse order here. The final question is, how much dollars, what dollar amount total the Marlins commit this offseason to free agents? Because I think this is a very, what you call out there is a very interesting point. Sandy's going to be back. Luzardo's back. I mean, they may trade them, but let's assume they don't trade them. They look at it and go, we've got a stacked rotation, a young offense. We might need to supplement this. We've got a super low payroll. Is Bruce going to dip his hand in his pocket and commit anything to get some extra talent in? Don't know. That's the question for you, Rob. What's the dollar amount in year 2025 dollar committed for free agents?
Do you know? I'd love to say like 100 million. I'd love to.
Let's go.
And we're off because the wage. I don't know what our current wage structure really is, but it must be so ridiculously low.
I think 2 million all in.
Yeah. So surely he's going to. Now, there are, if you want to supplement a few of those players, like, Xavier Edwards going to really, really kick on like he's done, is Bride going to go on? Is Berger still is going to develop a bit more? Then you do need more than one person in those positions. And I'm going to have to be positive and say 100 million, but the negative side that I've just been feeding through, it doesn't say anything more than 20.
Okay, that is a wide range, Rob.
But no, that's how it feels after this season, because you don't know how serious and how committed they are because they've just thrown everything away.
Yeah,
and say I was there on opening day. I was fortunate to be there, and everyone had the anticipation which they just blown up. So to reverse that, they're going to have to spend big. If it's 100 million and they're back in again, and then we're rocking again. If it's any less than that, then we are, perpetually, we're going to be the Colorado Rockies.
Sean Barrett, are we the Rockies this offseason?
It's interesting, isn't it? So as it stands, the Marlins' estimated luxury tax payroll is at 51 million for next year. 12,
Okay.
that's for Avi, of course. That doesn't include the arbitration numbers. So you've got Luzardo, year 3 of arbitration, Sanchez and Bender, arbitration 2 year, and then you've got Pache, Garrett, and Cabrera and Fortes are 1 year. So if you look at that number and say they're probably going to be about 70, 75 million in total outlet, it all depends on Sandy. If they trade Sandy, and I think we'll get an early sort of idea on that as well. If there's no if we get to like we did this year, late stages of free agency, and there's been no movement, we can pretty much be pretty sure, like, they're blowing it all up, like going all in on the blow up. And we'll have Dan's estimated 2056 playoff series. If there's a couple of moves that get us a little bit excited and look to actually improve the offense, we know that the team with the pitching that they've got, if healthy, a league average offense, which is what the team have been the last couple of months. Since they got rid of all the dead wood, they've been a league average, slightly above league average offense. With this pitching, that works. So if at the moment we're looking at 70, if I see 15 spent early, I can trust that they're going to spend 30 total to get to 100 million.
Yeah.
If there's no free agent signings early or mid, I know what they're doing. They're going to blow it up, and it's going to be a number close to 60, 70 million spent for the full season, and zero free agency money.
The funny thing is, did you see the White Sox, that report actually earlier this week that, the White Sox they're on the verge of being historically one of the worst team potentially ever. They're calling out that they need to cut payroll headed into 2025. And so, boy, oh boy, what a commitment there to the Chicago market, no doubt. But Dan, how are you seeing this, mate? Like dollar amounts, what's going to be committed? Is Bruce is he gonna invest, or is it going to stand pat?
I think it's interesting listening to Sean there, and I think a lot of it does really hinge on what they think they're going to do, and it all seems to revolve around how we get back with Sandy. So if Sandy's going to be a linchpin and a cornerstone, and we're going to go forward and build around him, then you can think, well, maybe we do accelerate this a bit quicker and spend some money. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to get him back. They're going to get his arm working. They're going to let teams look at him, and they're going to look to trade him. And I think we're going to embrace the tank and probably look to completely reset again and not spend anything.
Lead ups in the lead-off spot, but now the clean-up spot. Take it away.
Like I say, I've been a Marlins fan for 20 plus years, and we never spent we had one off season. What was that? 2012 when the name changed, when they went all in and spent 100 million and that, and then by June it was all gone already. But so for me, I think they will add a couple of pieces here and there. A bullpen arm, it costs like a couple of million. Some bench pieces. They might spend 10 to 15 million, but nothing major. It just be like ticking along some pieces here and there, and it just be So for me, 10 to 15 million, and that'd be it.
It feels like that's the range we're thinking about here, like 10 to 15 max. Sandy probably stays. They don't move him, but the intention is maybe to move him. I don't know what about Luzardo. He's entering, I think Sean said ARB3. Still another year of control. I think he's a Super 2 eligible dude, so I think he's got 2 years of control, but it's ARB3 for Luzardo. Sean's nodding, which is good. So, Luzardo is absolutely in the Bendix trade window right now. No doubt about it. And so I think if you see Luzardo moved, and I think you will, and I think you see them prioritize a shortstop prospect back in part of that deal. It's just it's what they tried last year. It didn't work. I think they go back to the well and they try to do that. As soon as Luzardo's moved, that is the white flag, in my opinion, on the 25 campaign. And then it's just a matter of time for Sandy. And that's the crown jewel. And you need to maximize that as best you can, whenever that is, with the team that can pay the most. But 25, I think, is going to be, the Marlins have an opportunity to pick again in the top 5, whatever it might be. They're going to take that opportunity. And are they going to minimize spending? We're going to talk about Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby and the green shoots of that. Probably those guys are going to struggle. And the Marlins aren't going to be very good in 25. I think that's probably the most likely outcome. It's good to brainstorm it, guys, because, sometimes it's an echo chamber in this room.
As well, to be honest, I haven't actually seen a list. I mean, well, what sort of players are they're coming up for? To get free agent in the window. I haven't seen sort of
free agency wise.
Yeah, we haven't really seen a list yet.
It's a great point, because I've been thinking about it too. It's there's a clear gap at shortstop, in my opinion. How do you address that gap? Do you sign a free agent? The only true stud in that space is Willy Adames, but they're not going to go there because it's going to be a huge commitment. So that's off the board. And we've seen a slew of multiple off seasons with massive shortstop contracts. You've kind of had that wave of shortstops that need to be paid, and they've been paid, but just not by the Marlins clearly. And so they're still kind of scratching around trying to play a second baseman at shortstop, or maybe they'll try and get Miguel Rojas back. I don't know, but I don't think it looks good from an investment perspective. I think they end up spending less than 10 this offseason. Is just my gut feel. I think it's going to be a tough year for the Marlins generally. I think it's going to be tough for the fan base. I think Luzardo and Sandy are both moved during the year. I think that's a real clear indication about the length of this. Like we've said, Sandy's the linchpin, but as soon as he's moved, that's a real clear indication. Nevertheless, guys, we're over an hour runtime, which feels about right. And I did say 45 minutes, so I apologize already. Let's wrap it up there. It's been glorious to have everyone back on the mic. I'm not even certain we've ever done a 5-man pod. Maybe we have multiple. I can't even recall, but nevertheless, it's been great to get everyone back on. I hope everyone's enjoyed listening to this as well. This is 5 British dudes talking about the Marlins. We used to do this weekly, and so I tip my cap to all you guys, and you can just hear the enthusiasm that burns through the mic in some ways about maybe what was or what could have been, maybe not the 24 campaign. But I appreciate every single one of you. It's Lee Dobbs, Dan Healy, Sean Barrett, of course, and Rob Newell. I appreciate absolutely every one of you guys for jumping on this one. And yeah, some throwback vibes, no doubt, which has been great. So let's wrap it up there, guys. Appreciate you. Thanks for everyone for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. The Dodgers are on deck. Going to be a fun series. I think a lot of eyeballs on this series. Let's see if Ohtani gets there in this series. I did think Vente Beozo was going to be going. Looks like he's been pushed back, which is probably unfortunate for Ohtani. But we'll see. It's going to be a fun series. We're going to keep the guests rolling in all week long, guys. Tons more guests queued up. So stick with us and look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. See you then.